Hello and welcome. Well, today we're going to talk to the author of a new book. It is called My Secret Brexit Diary. No, it's not Nigel Farage. It is Michel Barnier, who I think in the 4 years after the Brexit vote took place was probably one of the most famous people in the whole of Europe. And he's now running to be president of France. And I'm delighted, Michel, to welcome you to LBC. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Good to be here.
Well, let's take you back to the morning of June the 24th, 2016. Now, at that point, you didn't know what the next few years would have in store for you. But what was your reaction? No, nor me. No, because I didn't think the result was going to go the way it did. But what was your reaction when you heard that Britain had voted to leave the EU?
I was very surprised because the day before, the night, it was not the feeling, even in the Brexit camp,
True.
And I was disappointed because I thought it was not a good decision for both of us, the UK and Europe. I always thought that the Brexit, because it is a divorce, is a lose-lose game. So I was surprised and disappointed. But it was a sovereign decision of the UK people, 52% of the British citizens, and I immediately thought that we will have to respect this vote because it was and it remained a sovereign vote of the British people.
Do you feel that you understand exactly why Britain did vote in that way?
There is 2 points in your question. The first one is to understand the reasons. Yes, I try to understand. I spend a lot of time to listen, to meet everybody in the UK and to listen, to look at the reason. Because I think, as I wrote in my book, in particular in the first chapter, a warning for everybody. Too late for you, too late for the UK, but not too late for us. The second point is less easy to understand, and I still not understand the added value, the Brexit for the UK. And for us.
Because early on in the book, you talk about the fact that there are lots of people who are dissatisfied with a lot of things in Britain, not particularly necessarily the European Union, but they were angry about austerity, the policies of the David Cameron government. So they took the opportunity to kick the government, which I guess can happen anywhere. But if it can happen in Britain, it could happen elsewhere. Do you think that it could happen in another European country?
Yes, I think so, exactly for the reason you mentioned. The social, what I saw, the social anger, the lack of public services, no future, no job, uncontrolled immigration. So we can find exactly the same popular feeling, the same social anger in many regions of Europe. The reason why I wrote this chapter, the warning, and to just to say as a politician, a responsible politician, that we have to draw the lessons. And the answers, as you correctly said, are not all to be found in Brussels. Huh? Brussels made many mistakes in the 30, 40 last years. We can come back on this point. There is bureaucracy in Brussels. Objectively, you can find bureaucracy also in London, probably, or in Paris. Many reasons have to be found in Brussels, many answers, but not all the answers. The other answers are to be found in each national capital and sometimes at the regional level for the transportation or for the social care.
Do you think that one of the main driving factors in the Brexit vote was immigration? Or because the opinion polls, the surveys that have been done subsequently say that sovereignty was the main issue driving the Brexit vote. Immigration was number 2 or number 3. But a lot of people in this country who are devout Remainers, they think it's largely driven by immigration. What's your view?
No, I don't think so. I think the uncontrolled migration is a key problem for France, for instance, coming from abroad, from the third country. I think that the political reason, the rhetoric reason about sovereignty of UK was probably the first reason. It is my point of difference because I think that we need to keep and to protect our national sovereignty everywhere, not only in the UK. And what we have accepted to do in our interest in Europe is to build what I can call this solidarity between our national sovereignty, a solidarity between our national sovereignty. And it will be the line of my mandate if I am elected French president. National sovereignty, what you call global Britain, unemployment, no future, and migration, with this unfair confusion from Farage and some others between the freedom of movement in Europe and the migration coming from abroad. Huh?
Do you think that if Britain had followed other European countries in 2003, 2004 and restricted immigration from Eastern Europe rather than, I think Britain was only one of 2 or 3 countries in the EU, two?
Ireland and UK.
Well, if the Blair government had handled that differently, do you think we probably would never have had a referendum?
It's difficult to rewrite the story, but it's clear and true that at that time, 2004, at the time of the accession of Poland and 10 countries from the eastern part of Europe, UK had at that time the possibility to stop or not to accept the freedom of movement. And at that time, your country asked for the Polish people and some other from Romania or Bulgaria to come a little 2 years after for Bulgaria and Romania, but they asked them to come and to work and for the progress and for the economy of the UK. So it was not fair, in my view, to critique and to put all the responsibility on this freedom of movement, which was a choice, a sovereign choice for the UK.
Yeah, absolutely. But I suppose my point is that if that hadn't happened in that way, would Nigel Farage have ever got the oxygen that he then got to develop UKIP? And because I don't think at that point, I don't think if there'd been a referendum on EU membership, I don't think that the Leave side would have been anywhere near winning.
Once again, it's difficult to rewrite, but what was not correct and, in my view, very unfair from Farage was to confuse deliberately this freedom of movement from Polish people coming to UK inside the EU and the migration from Syrian and the refugees from the Middle East. So I think it was not fair.
How did you get on with Nigel Farage? I told him I was going to interview you, and he said, "Oh, he's a great guy. I absolutely love talking to him," which slightly surprised me because in the European Parliament he was always quite insulting to you.
No, but the direction was always correct because I'm, generally speaking, I respect the others, and all along this negotiation, it was not a tactic. Huh? It was my personal feeling. I have for the UK. Very old and very solid respect and admiration for your culture, for the many statesmen, including and first of all Winston Churchill, and for the diplomatic capacity, and I have a great respect. So I always respected the people, even if for Farage I have a huge and definitive difference with him. Huh? I never forget what he answered to me when I met him in my office at his request, and I recall this story in my book. My question at the end of our meeting was, Mr. Farage, okay, you won the Brexit, you campaigned for the Brexit, it's okay, now we are going to deliver the Brexit in a few months from now. How do you see the relation between UK and EU after the Brexit? And his answer was very, very, very immediate and spontaneous. Mr. Barnier, after Brexit, the EU will no longer exist. So Mr. Farage and some others want to destroy the EU. No way, no way. So
because he always maintained that wasn't his objective. He used to say...
It was his answer.
Well, no, I mean, that's very interesting because he would say publicly that he always wished the EU well, and it wasn't his wish to see the EU collapse.
After the Brexit, the EU will no longer exist. It's not true, it's not the reality, and it will not be the reality. But in the same time, once again, I don't need Mr. Farage to say that we have to draw the lessons and to change what need to be changed in Brussels to avoid new Brexit elsewhere.
Do you think part of the problem that the EU has always had is it's always had this aim of sort of ever closer union? And the message that I think that sent to the UK was, well, in the end, there will be a United States of Europe. And that was, even people who were supporters of the EU just found that quite a difficult concept.
In the EU side, between 28 member states, 27 now, there is so many differences, sensitivity, parties, and so on. So many opinions. If you ask me, because I'm in front of you today, I am a Gaullist since I'm 15. I'm not a federalist. I never be. And I am European because I think it is a national interest of my country to be European.
But would you describe yourself as French first and European second, or the other way around?
Patriot and European. In the front line of my Twitter account, Patriot and European for a long time. Patriot and European. And I think that to be patriot and to be European goes together. So my vision of Europe is not a federal state. It's not a United States of Europe. It is the reality is more complex, and this reality is unique. Never in the past, except the time of the empire. Nowhere in the world we have such a in France, we have a word which is very, very expressive and very correct to say what I see about Europe is mutualization. To mutualize. In fact, pooling. Pooling is not merging. So the political project of Europe is complex because we need to respect the national identities of each member state, its culture, its language, 24 languages, its traditions, its difference. And every country is very concerned by its own national identity and asked to be respected. So this is why it is so complex. When I was in the Council of Ministers, the European Council, I took part to the European Council for the last 4 years, the Council of Head of States, where I was invited. You have 24 cabins with translator. 2 translators by cabin is very, very expensive. It is very complex. It could be much more simple. You can put out the cabin and the translator, and we speak. Everybody speaks the same language, English. Thanks to you.
Still.
Yes, still. But it's not. We are working for a united Europe, not a unified Europe. Uniform.
That's quite
uniformity.
Is there a difference, though? Because I think to people in this country, they would see that as almost, I know it is a different word, but it's almost the same word, where unity means a united states.
No, unity is not the same thing that uniformity. We need to respect, and we want, and I want, if I'm the French president, that the EU respect the national identities and the national differences. But in the same time, we need to pool a certain part of our policies to build what I call the solidarity between our national sovereignty, just to be respected in the world. Because the reality, the reason why I think that it's much better to be together than alone, and I respect the choice of UK to be alone, okay, but in the current world, if you look at all the challenges we have to face in the next decade or the next few years, I think we cannot fight, we cannot be respected, we cannot defend our interests and our value alone in the current world. If you look at the climate change, the terrorism, the poverty in Africa, and the flows of migrants, if you look at the financial stability, the risk of a new financial crisis, be careful. for many of these challenges, it's better and it's more efficient to be together. Well, it is my definitive feeling.
Let's go back to the book, and when you were appointed as the Brexit negotiator by Jean-Claude Juncker,
European negotiator.
European negotiator,
being French, but European negotiator.
But you had an interesting past with Jean-Claude Juncker, didn't you? And I think you were quite surprised that he asked you to be the negotiator.
Yes, we were opposed it is your point, in an internal election for the presidency of the Commission in 2014, but it was a loyal competition, and he won. I lost at the time. It was fair. And a few years after, he asked me to be his special advisor for defense, which is unusual for the President of the Commission to have a special advisor for defense. And he has the great merit to engage, to push some new steps for not a European army. I'm not in favor of a European army, but just a cooperation. And we have created a structured cooperation for defense between the European country, and also for the first time investment fund in defense. So it was a proof of our trust and the friendship that he asked me to be on his side for the defense matters. And a few weeks after the Brexit referendum, he asked me in Warsaw. We were I was with him for a meeting with Obama, and he asked me just before this meeting if I agreed to be the negotiator for him.
And what was your immediate reaction? Was it excitement, or did you foresee the difficulties or did you foresee that it would take so long?
The both. I didn't think at that time it would be so long, because we cannot imagine that Mrs. May will face so many difficulties to get majority to approve the deal. She agreed 3 times. But it was for sure a very difficult and complex negotiation at the base, and it was also historical. So I did not hesitate to say yes.
I'd love to hear your assessment of some of the personalities involved in these negotiations from the British side, because obviously you were a constant. You were there the whole time, but you faced a series of different British negotiators. 4.
1 per year.
Did that give you a bit of an advantage in the negotiations? The fact that there were different people representing Britain.
Sure.
And at the beginning, you were dealing with David Davis, but then Ollie Robbins seemed to be the main protagonist. And he was obviously a civil servant, but seemed to be Theresa May's representative rather than David Davis.
The choice of the UK, was to have a 2-level of negotiator, the political level and the technical level at the cabinet of the Prime Minister, Ollie Robbins, who is, to be frank, a very, very impressed and very competent person. No? Generally speaking, I can tell you that the real respect and admiration I had and I have now for a long time towards the high civil servants of the UK, which are professional and competent. And I had with David Davis, I knew David Davis for a long time before, because we were together, the 2 European ministers in 1997. And we negotiated together for a long time the Treaty of Amsterdam. So we had a good relation, even if we don't agree on the European vision. But I had even if sometimes I was disappointed by some speeches or we had a good relation with the negotiator of the UK. But I don't know if it is an advantage. It was a reality. I remain all along the time, from the day 1 to the last day, and they change the negotiator every year.
That famous picture of your first meeting with David Davis, where you had lots of notes in front of you and he had nothing, he got a lot of criticism for that in the British press. And I mean, he has a slightly different story about that, saying that that was not a negotiating meeting. Sure. It was a photo opportunity. But he had a.
He's right. I was sorry for this polemic, because he asked me to have a short meeting in my office before beginning negotiation session, and he came with the ambassador and Ollie Robbins without paper, but I was prepared to go immediately after for the negotiation with my two deputies, Sabine and Stephanie, and we have our dossier in front of us, and he asked himself for the photograph. And he diffused the photograph after, himself, not me. And so I was sorry for this polemic because it was not true. Huh?
He also got a lot of criticism for not getting into the detail, and you kind of confirm that in the book, don't you, where you said sometimes you had thought that he would be in the room, but he delegated a lot of the detail.
It was not on a daily basis in Brussels. We were not on a daily basis in negotiation, one per month. So for the details, we worked with Ollie Robbins and his team. And sometimes I've been surprised by some speeches. For instance, my book described the first famous dinner with Jean-Claude Juncker and Theresa May at 10 Downing Street. And a few days before, I was surprised to hear or to listen to David Davis speaking about the two agencies, the two European agencies seated in London, the medicine agencies and the banking agencies. And he said, it's perfectly possible for us to keep these two agencies in London despite the Brexit. It was not true. So it was one of my surprises. Huh?
You had quite a lot of surprises over the 4 years, didn't you?
Yes. But the reason why along this wrong road I tried to avoid any kind of passion, aggressivity, emotion. I am able to emotion. I was very moved in Ireland, but I try to avoid to show emotion and passion, and to stick to the fact, to stick to the legal base, to stick to our interest, and to listen to the UK interest, but to stick to the facts.
Do you think, in retrospect, it was...
It was not a meeting, it was not a congress, it was a negotiation of two treaties of 1,040 pages.
Very true. I wonder, in retrospect, though, if you think it was a good idea to have so many press conferences, because there's a conflict, isn't there, between transparency and letting people know generally where the negotiations are at. But at times, I felt that the negotiations being conducted almost through the press conferences. No. Do you think that it was a good idea to do it that way?
I think it was a good idea to have at regular time, one per month, or not so many press conferences, because but there was no interference between this press conference and negotiation. We just say where we were in this press conference. And on our side, we have chosen, it would be a surprise for the UK side, to use what is unusual in Brussels, to be fair, what was unusual, total transparency. Because this transparency avoid the leaks many times, good point, and also it was one of the tools of the trust and the unity of the 27. We have decided on our side, which is, once again, unusual, to say everything to everybody on every issue at the same time. Everything on every issue at the same time. Speaking at the same time to the German Chancellor or the Prime Minister of Malta. Huh? And it was the reality of negotiation on our side. It was constraints for the negotiation. In Brussels, we had a special group of 27 Brexit delegates, one per country, and my team report to this group twice per week, and I report myself one per week to the Parliament. So the total transparency.
And you were very successful in keeping the 27 unified, weren't you? Because I think, as you say in the book, that there were attempts by the British government to try and pick one or two countries off by talking to them directly.
David Davis and his successor tried every day to bypass my team, to bypass myself, to engage directly with the government. It was a mistake. It was losing time. Why? Because I was a negotiator, not only at the Commission, as usual, but also at the same time, on the same mandate, negotiator of the 27 leaders and the European Parliament, which is, once again, unusual. And I think the UK did not understand this difference until the very last moment. But it was losing time to try to bypass, because I never could have worked without the total coherence between my position and the position of the member states and the Parliament. But another point is important, speaking about unity. And the paradox is that the leverage of unity has been the unanimity. In that negotiation, we were obliged on the European side to be unanimous, to conclude. One member state could have blocked everything, one member state. So that means that one concern of one member state had to become the concern of 26 others.
And did it ever get close to that, where, I mean, in the latter stages, France was obviously not very happy about some of the fishing arrangements, for example.
Not only France.
But were there other countries that were expressing concerns which could have led to a veto?
The rule was everyone for all. Everyone for all. That means that one concern, specific concern, not only fishery for France or for Denmark or for Belgium or Netherlands or Ireland, but speaking about the peace in Ireland.
Well, we'll come on to that in a few minutes.
It was the main point, the main example. The peace in Ireland is a concern from Ireland, sharing and supporting by the 26 others. But the same for Gibraltar or Spain, the British bases in Cyprus, and so many issues. Everyone for all. And this unanimity, this obligation to be unanimous, has been the main leverage of unity.
Dominic Raab replaced David Davis.
For a few months.
For very few months. I don't think you really got on with him, did you?
No, we have not the same character, we have not the same past, the same experience, so it was a little bit difficult. Perhaps it was much more political. Generally speaking, I had in front of me, in particular with David Frost in the last year, people speaking always about rhetoric, philosophy, politics. But the fact is that this treaty was about trade, transport, fishery, peace in Ireland, so less philosophy than practical things. So the paradox, if I may say, frankly speaking, is that for negotiation between the French and the Brits, I think I used to be much more pragmatic.
What do you mean?
I just repeat that the paradox between the French and the British negotiator, if you look at the two during this time, I think that I used to be more pragmatic.
And now?
I don't know now. I know I'm still pragmatic, but the pragmatism is a quality of the usual quality of the Brits.
Did you feel that one of the main challenges that you had was to work out who was actually speaking on behalf of Theresa May? Because obviously Ollie Robbins became a key figure. Did you find that he was the main channel in the end and that the politicians almost took a side role?
No, I have in my mind clearly the polemics, the attack, sometimes not very fair against Ollie Robbins. And Ollie Robbins works, in my view, at the honour of the UK government. He was and he used to be, and I think he still is a great person and a very responsible and very competent man. So facing the change of minister in charge of the Brexit, he assured he get the guarantee of the continuity during the mandate of Theresa May. But after he left, and we had a new team for the conclusion of the first negotiation. And remember, the conclusion was clearly negotiated by Boris Johnson, David Frost, in particular on the Irish issue.
What was Boris Johnson in some ways easier to deal with than Theresa May?
We made the deal with Boris Johnson. The two deals. The first one on the political institutional Brexit, November 19, and the second deal on the economic and trade Brexit, Christmas 2020. We made the deal with Boris Johnson. We did not succeed to make the deal with Theresa May.
That was
they succeed to get the approval and the ratification of the Parliament.
Did you trust Boris Johnson, though?
I'm ready to trust him, but the point is now the trust needs the respect of the signature. The trust needs, in the medium and long term, the reality for the UK to respect its signature, to implement the treaty as it is.
One person who you are quite critical of in the book is Martin Selmayr, who was dubbed in the British tabloid press the Beast of Berlaymont. And he was Jean-Claude Juncker's chief of staff, but very, very influential. And you accuse him of interfering in the processes, which wasn't really his job. And he once famously said that Northern Ireland would be the price that the UK has to pay for Brexit. When you heard that reported, what was your reaction?
I have not the same feeling. It is not my position. But Martin Selmayr is a very competent man, very professional, very European. No question at that point. It was unusual for the Commission and for the cabinet of the President to have a specific and unique negotiator. And the fact is that I always had with Jean-Claude Juncker directly a link of trust and friendship. So it was perhaps sometimes difficult to accept by his cabinet. But finally we succeed to work together.
But did you ever have to say to Jean-Claude Juncker, you need to stop him talking?
No, just to check with Jean-Claude Juncker that he trusts me and he supports my line, and it was the case until the last time.
Very diplomatically put. On Northern Ireland, I certainly felt at the time, and I don't think you'll agree with this, but I felt at the time that the EU was almost weaponising the issue of Northern Ireland because it knew that it would be a very difficult one for Britain to handle, and that difficulties were put in place that need not have been difficulties. I'll give you one example. Leo Varadkar, the Irish Taoiseach, made a speech in Belfast. I can't remember the date, but I think it was sometime in 2017. And he said in this speech that it would be possible for Britain and Ireland to sort out the border between them. And almost immediately, almost within weeks, he was singing a very different tune. And the suspicion was that the Commission had stamped on this and said, no, you can't do side deals with Britain. This has to be done through us. Tell me your perspective on that.
First of all, I always be able to count on the support and the friendship of Leo Varadkar. The same for Michel Barnier after him as a Taoiseach. Number two, it was clear from the very beginning. I don't remember clearly the speech of Leo Varadkar, but it was clear that being a member of the single market, the Irish problem must be the problem of the 27, because what is at stake for us in Ireland is, number one, the peace, which is a common responsibility. Number two, the protection of the single market. So let me just be frank. We never used the Irish case in a bad faith for the negotiation. Never. My only concern, because I love the Irish people, but perhaps because I'm French, but
so do we.
I feel very well in Ireland, to be frank, except when they won in rugby against which arrives very often. But I feel very well. I love this country and the people, frankly. And what is at stake in Ireland is not a question of trade or goods or technical. It's a problem linked to the peace, to the people. So no question to use this issue for just technical or tactic of negotiations. And my goal was very clear. What creates problems in Ireland is Brexit, nothing else. Now, nothing else. So we try to find operational solutions, technical solutions for the problem created by Brexit. We tried with Theresa May several times, the famous backstop, the global backstop, the limited backstop. Okay, Johnson arrived and asked for a new change. We worked with Boris Johnson, with him, not without him, not against him. We worked to find a solution with him, and we found a solution with him. I know perfectly what he signed. And to be frank, I think there is a way to maintain the stability of Ireland and the peace without drama. If we try on both sides to implement this protocol by de-dramatizing the issue. We are speaking about checks and control in Belfast for the part of the goods coming from England to Northern Ireland through Belfast and not through Dublin. You know that part of the goods are coming through Dublin. For this part coming directly through Belfast, we are speaking of checks and control. And let me be clear, a part of the checks and control have existed before the Brexit. And I recall in this book my meeting with Mr. Dodd, Mrs. Dodd and
Nigel Dodds, the DUP politician.
And I asked him, do you recognize, Mr. Dodd, that part of the checks exist today? His answer was yes. So we have to de-dramatize. Just me recall for the people and the auditors. A cow coming from England to Belfast, if there is no border on the ground, a cow entering in the same country from England to Northern Ireland, entering in France, is entering in France at the same time, mechanically. Because the Ireland is an epidemiologic single zone, so we have to be careful.
Indeed, and I completely understand that. But that could be a problem if British food standards, for example, were inferior to those in the European Union, but they're not. In fact, in many ways, they are superior. And it seems to a lot of people that while the protocol there had to be a protocol, nobody's denying that, and I don't think anybody's saying, well, apart from maybe some of the unionist parties, that it should be abolished completely. But where you then find difficulties in the implementation, and clearly there are difficulties, I don't think anybody's denying that, those difficulties need to be resolved. Yes. Are you confident that they will be resolved soon?
I know I'm no longer in charge for the Commission now. The mission is in the hands of a very wise man and very competent man with the Vice President of the Commission, Maros Sefcovic, and he is doing a good work. We are ready to find operational and technical solutions to discuss with the UK, not to renegotiate the protocol. So if it is clear, and in the next few days and weeks, the UK government must be very careful. If it's clear that we work in the framework of the protocol, I think we can be able to find solutions. For instance, for the transport of medicine and some other.
When you say the UK government must be very careful in the next few weeks, what do you mean?
I think that we have to respect this protocol, for the UK government to respect its signature. This situation is followed in each capital, obviously by the Irish people, but also in Washington. So what is at stake is the peace in Ireland. So everybody have to be responsible, and I think that we have to work to implement in a clever way, practical way, without any kind of dramatization or ideology, this protocol. I know that it is. I know the position of the DUP, but I know also the position of the majority of the political party in Northern Ireland, because this protocol is in favour of the economy of Northern Ireland.
Let's move on to your future, because you're standing to be president of France. You hit the headlines in this country recently, as I'm sure you know, when you said that you thought that power should be taken back from the European courts, and also there should be a referendum on immigration into France. Nigel Farage called you a massive hypocrite for that and welcomed you to the Eurosceptic cause. It did seem extraordinary that somebody who's been defending European institutions would then effectively seek to undermine them.
I've been never impressed by Mr. Farage or his polemics and his critics. And never impressed during the negotiation. I'll certainly not be impressed now. Definitely not. So he's wrong, because what I'm speaking about is precisely a new French national policy for migration coming from outside of Europe. I never put into question, as Mr. Farage, the freedom of movement inside Europe. I never put into question the fact that my country is one of the leaders of the Europe from the very beginning. And I want for France to remain and to be strong, and Europe to be strong. So I'm working as a French politician responsible, running for the French presidency, on the problem, which are the problem of France today, with uncontrolled migration policy. And this policy does not work in France. It doesn't work at European level, so we have to change. And Mr. Farage can say what you want to say, and I have nothing to do with him, nothing, never. But I have something to do with the French problem and the French concern to be responsible. And I have no lessons.
But how does a referendum help? I mean, you've seen what happened in our referendum. I mean, what do you even ask in such a referendum?
It is a referendum specifically dedicated to the question of migration.
But what do you ask?
Because there is no reference in the French constitution to migrations. So we have to put some words to be able to take the national measure we need in some cases.
But what is that measure?
The first point is about the capacity for the Parliament to decide every year on quotas for migration, economic migration from outside, abroad. And the second point is to give what we call the constitutional shield, to have the capacity to have in our constitution, which is not the case today, the words we need on migration.
Some would say, though, that you're only doing this because you know that to win, you've got to get votes back from Marine Le Pen's far-right party, and that they're obsessed by immigration, and therefore you have to talk about it in this way to get the right-wing vote.
Please, look this morning in the very, very great newspaper, Le Figaro, an article, a tribune signed by Mr. Manuel Valls, the former socialist Prime Minister of France, saying exactly what I said, exactly the same. So I don't care on Mrs. Le Pen or the others. I care about the problem and the fact which does not work in my country, and to find solution. I'm European, I'm patriot, and I have no lesson to receive, neither from the patriotism, neither from the European involvement. But the difference with many others is precisely the Brexit. I want to draw the lessons. We have to tackle, to answer to the concern of the people in the right way.
You voted for Emmanuel Macron last time. If you win the nomination...
The second term.
Second
against
ballot,
the extreme right.
If you win the nomination, you will be fighting him now. You've been quite critical of him recently. What did you think of his reaction to the creation of the AUKUS pact between Britain, America and Australia?
This decision to cancel this contract on submarine is very serious. On the substance itself, obviously, but also and perhaps more seriously about the method and the fact that the behavior between allies was not correct. This contract has been cancelled without any prior discussion between allies, between the United States of America, Australia, UK, and France, and it was not fair. And I think it's not the good behavior, not the right behavior to have between allies. If alliance means trust and not allegiance, I'm not ready to accept an alliance which would mean allegiance. It's not the interest of NATO to have a weak leg in Europe. So once again, I think it was not the right behavior, and now the problem is serious, and the French are unanimous on this point. the US and the UK have a lot of effort to do to rebuild the trust, because this trust is seriously fragilized.
If you become president, how will the relationship between France and the United Kingdom be different from if Emmanuel Macron wins again?
I'm not looking to create a difference everywhere. When the French attitude is correct, when the French decisions are correct, I will support and continue or amplify. We could have the same feeling about the fact that the situation today is very, very serious, and it's not good for both sides. So we need to rebuild the trust between allies after the AUKUS crisis. We need trust to be sure that the signature of UK will be respected, and the Brexit treaty for Ireland and for the fishery. This is the precondition for us to rebuild the cordial entente.
That's a very positive way to end. Michel Barnier, thank you.
Let me just add.
Okay.
I always add during all these negotiations 3 points in my mind, and it is the truth. Number one, to defend the EU, the integrity of the single market, no way to accept any kind of cherry picking. Number two, the peace in Ireland. Number three, the spirit we need in the medium and long term to cooperate between UK and Europe and UK and France. And I will remain on this line.
Well, if you win, and I wish you luck, I've never interviewed a French president before, so I hope you'll come back when you are in the... Or maybe I can come to the Elysee and interview you. That would be good.
Yes. Let's first of all the French people decide. Huh? But I'm ready to come in any case.
Fantastic. Michel Barnier's book is called My Secret Diary. It's out now, and it's a cracking read. Thank you very much indeed.